Hey, it's your friend Choice CJ here, and this is going to be my draft analysis video for BBL season number 2. Now, this is going to be a very fun league that's run by my buddy AA Run 2 for 20. Shoutouts to him for inviting me. I'm quite excited for this. It's actually an Ubers league, so there are a lot of Ubers Pokemon that are allowed. Not everything, like Primal Groudon's not allowed, and like Mega Salamence is not allowed. So I do want to give a big thanks to AA Ron for curating the banned list for this league, doing a lot of testing in Season 1. He does a lot of tournaments as well to test this banned list. He's really put a lot of effort into this, so big thanks to him for all of the hard work and for all of his supporting mods and everything else. Really excited to get back into this league. Haven't played much Pokemon in the last month or so, ever since we finished our match versus Uzi for the UBL Season 2 Championship. So if you did miss that, definitely go check it out. That was a really great match with a photo finish. And yeah, I'm really hoping that I can maintain my momentum from that season and come in with a really strong performance once again in BBL here. So quick notes about the draft. Like I mentioned, it is an Ubers draft. There are 16 teams. It's a point-based draft, so you need to get between 10 and 12 Pokemon, and the Pokemon are worth anywhere from 1 point all the way up to 24. Actually, 25 points was the most expensive Pokemon that was available. If I do recall, I think like Marshadow and Mega Lucario were worth 25 points. So just as long as you come in with under 120 points, you can take anywhere between 10 and 12 Pokemon. Z moves, you have 30 points with which to designate Z Pokemon. So we'll do that at the end of the draft. Anything else to add? I think that's basically it. We had the 3rd overall pick, and that puts us in a really good position to basically get anything that we want. So let me tell you a little bit about my draft strategy then. There are basically 2 things that I wanted potentially with the 3rd overall pick. I was hoping to either get Magearna or Arceus. So Magearna I wanted because it does have access to Z moves in this league. It's an incredible threat offensively and defensively. And the big kicker was that it was only 18 points. So I thought it was a tremendous value pick. And, you know, basically it was going to be like really worth it. And you could combo that with another Ubers Pokemon later in the league, later in the draft rather. So it was kind of complicated. Like basically, you could take one Uber that was 25 points. You could take 2 Ubers that were like either 23, 24 points, and then also a 17 to 18 point Uber, or you could take like 2 Pokemon from 22, 23, and then 1 from 21, 20, if that makes sense. Like, so basically, like, there wasn't a way to like stack your team with like a bunch of 20-point mons. You had to like do a balance of either like the best Ubers and then like some slightly less good Ubers, but still Ubers, you know. So anyway, Magearna like is a really good like low tier Uber, basically is what I'm trying to say. So I could take that in the first round. And then take like another Uber later on, like basically try and get whatever drops to the 2nd round or later. So Magearna, those are the reasons that Magearna would have been really great. Arceus would have been really great because one thing that's really interesting with the draft is that basically only one person can get Arceus, and they can only use 1 form, but they don't have to declare that form until the end of the draft. So if you take Arceus, it actually gives you quite a bit of flexibility because you can like basically see what's available to you, you know, later on in the draft, and then make a decision about which type you want. So there are 2 types that I was really hoping for with Arceus if I were to get it, either Dark or Dragon, because I think Dark is just so good offensively, and it really threatens Psychic types, which are one of the most annoying things to deal with in Draft League. And then Dragon is like a really good defensive typing, switches into Water, Grass, Fire, Electric, etc. And it's also like a little bit better defensively, or sorry, in a utility role than Arceus Dark would be. Like it's a good rocker and a good defogger, and it also has a little bit of a better move pool for like Swords Dance sets. You can do like Swords Dance, Dragon Claw, Earthquake, whereas Arceus Dark doesn't have a really good physical Dark type move. So anyway, like those are the 2 things that I'm weighing between with Arceus, and again, it was sort of between Arceus and Magearna for my third overall pick. So all that said and done, I did go with Arceus. And I've kind of already explained what I really like about Arceus Dark. It's very good offensively, but it does still have like the utility options with Stealth Rock, Defog. Has some kind of funny stuff with like Perish Song, Thunder Wave, and also yeah, I said Perish Song, Thunder Wave already. Yeah, so, and also Whirlpool was the move I was thinking of. So down here, you won't see it in most cases, but it does have Whirlpool. So I'm kind of intrigued by like a trapping set with Arceus Dark. But anyway, like I said, up to this point, I basically wanted to see what was going to be the next, 2 rounds of picks, because I basically don't get to pick until the end of round 2. And once all of those picks were done, I thought one thing that'd be really fun to pair with something like Arceus Dark would be Mega Medicham. The reason I really like Mega Medicham to pair with Arceus, something like Arceus Dark in particular, is because I do have Baton Pass on Mega Medicham. So I can use Medicham to lure in Bulky Psychics, which is really the only reliable switch-ins to Mega Medicham. I can Baton Pass out of that and then go into Arceus and immediately threaten that thing with a powerful Dark-type move. And so hopefully, like, if they do switch out, that gives me a free turn to go for either a utility move like Stealth Rock or something like that, or it gives me the option to go for a setup move. So I think that's really nice. And then obviously Medicham just by itself is a really fantastic wall breaker, really fantastic Pokemon with really powerful dual stabs, base 100 attack stat to combo with its ability Pure Power, making it nearly unstoppable. It's got some decent priority options with Fake Out and Bullet Punch. It even has some defensive utility, like Leo used this versus me in GBAD League as a switch in to Terrakion. So like defensive sets with Recover are not out of the question. So that's really funny. So that was the core I decided I wanted to build around, is Arceus Dark and Mega Medicham. And just in terms of nicknames, let me just go through real quick. I have Dreyfus for Arceus Dark, which is the leader of the Holy Knights in the 7 Deadly Sins TV show. And he's also one of the 10 Commandments in the next season of that, one of the demonic race, sort of their upper echelon of demons. And then Hakfu is a shout out to the Jackie Chan Adventures cartoon, which is one of my favorite cartoons growing up. So yeah, these two are really good. With the rest of the draft, though, I'm not 100% sure like what I want to draft. So basically, I'm just going to take Pokemon that I like and then go from there. And one Pokemon that I like a lot and I've been wanting to use for several seasons now is Garchomp. And I've named Garchomp SLBM, which stands for Submarine Launched Ballistic Missile. So sort of makes sense. Garchomp is like sort of the underground burrowing land shark Pokemon. And submarines obviously aren't underground, but they are underwater. So I thought it was close enough. The Garchomp does hit as hard as a ballistic missile, especially because I have decided to make it one of my Z captains. So this Pokemon with a Z Crystal it has no switch-ins. Like I can wall break any check to this thing. Like if a Fairy type wants to switch into me, I can go for Ground DMZ and break it. If a Grass type wants to switch into me, I can go for Dragonium Z and break it. So really fantastic wall breaker. And then there's there's a lot to be said for Garchomp and its ability as a utility Pokemon. So it's a great Stealth Rock setter. It's a phaser with Dragon Tail. It's a Pokemon that can punish physical type attackers with Rough Skin, and especially if you put on a Rocky Helmet on it. It's just really fantastic overall. It's a little bit unfortunate that this is in like a very similar speed tier to Medicham, but I thought Garchomp was just such a good Pokemon on its own that I couldn't pass it up in the 3rd round, when it's usually a first round Pokemon in most drafts for Gen 7. So yeah, Garchomp I thought would be really good. It's also one thing I really like about it is a really good electric type check. And I have another Pokemon later in mind later on that I think is going to make a really good partner for dealing with electric types. So yeah, Garchomp, definitely an all-star pick. My next pick is going to be Vesuvius, the Heatran. This is making a return after I used it in UBL Season 2 on my championship run. So one thing that I want to do differently with Heatran this time versus what I did with it in UBL is I really want to make it as a better offensive attacker. On that team, it was very, very pressured to deal with Dragon types, Fairy types, Flying types, and things like that. So I'm going to try and draft a few Pokemon to alleviate that pressure. And then I'm also going to give Heatran a Z Crystal this time around. So making it my Z user, I think is going to make it a lot more potent offensively. It's going to allow it to really punish some of the counters to Heatran usually. So things like water types that can switch in pretty freely on Heatran, like Melodic and Vaporeon and things like that, are going to get punished by like Magma Storm and Z Solar Beam. And then similarly, like bulky fire types like Arcanine and things like that are not really going to want to switch in on a Z Heatran, considering I can go for like a Z Earth Power versus them or something like that. So I think giving it the Z Crystal, it gives it a lot more firepower, no pun intended. And then, like I mentioned, I'm hoping to draft around it a little bit better, so that way it can really thrive offensively. But that doesn't mean I won't bring it as a utility Pokemon either. Like, this thing is just one of the best utility Pokemon in the game, with things like Stealth Rock, Taunt, Magma Storm, like I mentioned, Lava Plume, which has the same bird chance as Scald. Things like that. It's just really, really great as a utility Pokemon. It's one of the best in the game, for sure. And it's just so bulky. Like, yes, it does have the 4-time ground weakness, but you can put a Shuka Berry and it can live almost any ground hit. So that's what I did a lot in UBL, so we're going to be doing that same thing again in this upcoming season. So next, I'm feeling kind of weak to water types, and also still a tiny bit weak to dragon types. So Primarina seems like a really good option, and it also is something that can apply a lot of offensive pressure with its stab moves being water and fairy, and this just really high special attack stat at base 126. It doesn't really do too much other than that. Like, in terms of utility moves, I mean, like, it just pretty much just has some really strong attacking moves. It does have Perish Song as a cheeky utility move, also has Encore. But, it doesn't need, like, a great defensive move pool to be, like, a good defensive Pokemon. Just this bulk and this typing alone is enough to make it a really, really good defensive Pokemon. Its typing allows it to check things like Greninja extremely well, and we do have all 3 forms of Greninja in this draft. It's a good check to a lot of fire types and things like that. Good check to a lot of dragon types. So I think Primarina is just an all-star all around. We're naming it Emma Stone after the how do you say? She was the namesake of the division that we won in the UBL. I'm pretty sure. I don't think it was Emma Watson. I'm pretty sure it was Emma Stone. If I got that wrong, then I apologize. But I'm still going with Emma Stone. Emma Watson is already a different Pokemon in my nickname lore. It's named for Gardevoir. So couldn't name Primarina after that. The name was already taken. But yeah, it's just a really good offensive and defensive Pokemon. It's something that I really wanted to use. So next then is Piloswine. So this is the Pokemon I mentioned earlier when I said I had another ground type in mind for pairing with Garchomp to make it a very good, to make my team very sturdy versus electric types. Because electric types can really run amok if you let them just get free momentum versus your team. So I think with 2 ground types, it's going to be very hard for electric types to abuse Volt Switch versus me. The other reason Piloswine was really nice is because it does have Ice Shard as a priority move, and especially being in an Ubers League where there's so many powerful dragons, I thought having powerful Ice-type priority would be really valuable. I could have gone with something a little stronger, like Mamoswine or Weavile, obviously, but this was a much more budget pick, and so I liked it for that reason. Like, my draft so far is pretty expensive. Like, Arceus Dark is 24 points. This is like 16 points, Garchomp's like 15, Heatran's like 15, so I don't have a lot of points left already, which is unfortunate. So yeah, so this was a good budget type, budget Ice Shard user. And then just the fact that it can run a Violite with something like Thick Fat makes it a very good defensive Pokemon as well. Like, it can switch in really easily on Ice type moves from Electric types that, they would be running normally to try and threaten Garchomp. Like, they also then need to pack, like, a Water-type move, a Fighting-type move, a Grass-type move, something like that in order to hit Piloswine super effectively. So, it just deters things like Thundurus from running Double Dance sets, which I really like, because those Pokemon are really scary to deal with. Now I can just try and revenge kill them with something like Arceus, which puts me in a really good position. So yeah, that's what I'm thinking with Piloswine. So that's the first half of the draft. Let's now look at the second half of the draft. So, first off, we do have regular Scizor here, aka Tony Stark, which is named, of course, for his brethren as a fellow metal man. So Scizor, I think, with Heatran is going to be really, really nice because it takes a lot of that pressure off of Heatran for dealing with fairy types, and to a lesser extent dealing with dragon types. And then the other thing that's really nice is that basically because Scizor is 4 times weak to Hidden Power Fire, I do have Heatran in the back to absorb that Hidden Power Fire and get that Flash Fire boost. So it's going to deter my opponents at least a little bit from going for HP Fire freely. There's some consequences to doing that. And then similarly, like, it creates a little bit of a Hidden Power choke, right? Because Heatran, you want ground type moves to hit it, but you can't run Hidden Power Ground and Hidden Power Fire to deal with both Scizor and Heatran. So I really like that option for Hidden Power chokes. And that also combos a little bit with Garchomp being 4 times weak to Ice. Both Scizor and Heatran resist the Ice, and at the same time you can't run Ice and Ground and Fire. Not that they all share the same checks. I think it's just mainly Scizor and Heatran that share checks, but you guys get my point. Like, Heatran can then kind of deal with the electric types potentially to some extent, unless they're packing Focus Blast or Super Power or something. So it's just really nice that the hidden powers are going to be stretched thin on all the different Pokemon on my opponent's team. But yeah, Scizor on its own, of course, is fantastic. It has like one of the strongest priority moves in the game, being Bullet Punch. It has one of the strongest momentum moves in the game, being U-Turn. And it has lots of good setup options, lots of good support options with screens and defog and things like that. And Knockoff, of course, is a really fantastic support move. So overall, Scizor, really happy with it on the team. Next we have Bloat, my Qwilfish. Bloat is one of my all-time favorites. I've probably drafted it for like 4 times now in different seasons of different leagues. I really like this as a defensive Pokemon with Intimidate for switching in on things like fighting types and weakening them, or at least like weakening their attack power, I mean. It's got just enough attack that it's not like it's not hitting like a wet noodle. Like 95 is okay. And it's got, you know, enough stab options with Poison Jab and Waterfall, which is really good. It has Spikes, of course, which is really nice. Even has some other funny options, like it does have Rain Dance plus Swift Swim if I really want to run an offensive set of Qwilfish. It's got SD, it's got Aqua Jet. In terms of support, it does have Destiny Bond and Thunder Wave as well. So really like Qwilfish. If I do run it offensively, it gives me a really nice speed tier between Heatran and Medicham. Right now I don't have anything in between Heatran and Medicham, so coming in at 85 is really nice. My next Pokemon also sort of fills in that speed gap a little bit, and that is Xatu. So Xatu has base 95 speed, so now I have a bunch of things layering in between Heatran and Medicham on my team. Xatu admittedly wasn't my first choice for Psychic type. I knew I wasn't going to get a top tier Psychic type, but I really wanted Musharna, because it's a little bit bulkier than Xatu. It has Healing Wish, which is a really good support move for the team. Xatu, unfortunately, only has Wish and things like that. But Musharna was not available, so I did go with Xatu instead. But Xatu, I think, still provides a lot of value, mostly as a utility mon with like Magic Balance and Wish, like I said, and also like Thunder Wave and things like that. But offensively, Xatu's not bad either. It does have the combination of Calm Mind and Stored Power if I want to run an offensive set. Or a setup set rather. Offensively, because the speed is pretty good and the special attack is not too bad, I can run like choice sets, either Specs or Scarf, and do pretty good. And I can abuse those choice sets with something like U-Turn, which is really nice. I also get Trick if I want to trick a Specs or a Scarf onto something that might want to switch into Xatu. Like, for example, Skarmory is probably a pretty good switch into Xatu, but I can then cripple that thing with a choice Specs or something like that. So overall, Xatu is pretty good. I tend to like my Psychic types to be a little bulkier, so that way I can switch on fighting types extremely easily. But I feel a little bit better knowing that I have one of the scariest fighting types in the league on my team already, being Mega Medicham, and so I don't have to try and deal with Medicham in addition to all the other scary fighting types. I only have to deal with things like Gallade and Lopunny and stuff like that. So, yeah, that's it with Xatu. Next up, I do have Archeops, which I'm naming Argentavis, which is the name of like the largest prehistoric bird ever discovered. So felt appropriate with Archeops being this giant extinct bird. I really wanted to make this a Z Crystal user because it's a really awesome budget Z Crystal user. But at this point, like you can see, I do have a Grass type and Electric type with my next 2 picks. But besides those 2, I don't have a lot of really good ways of dealing with water types. And so I thought that making Heatran my Z Crystal user would help me deal with water types a little bit better. And so I thought then I would just use Archeops as like a regular Pokemon. But Archeops has a ton of value anyway. Like offensively, it is pretty scary. Like obviously Defeatist sucks because it's going to make me weaker when I'm not at full health. But you know, for a few turns, you know, it can still be a really good wall breaker as long as it has at least half HP. It's a really good lead. One for setting up rocks very quickly because I have very fast rocks on this set. But also for preventing rocks from my opponent because this does have taunt. It does have some other really good lead option moves like Endeavor and Quick Attack. So like if I go up versus a Choice Scarf Electric type, for example, they can go for Volt Switch versus me, bring me down to a Focus Sash, and then I can go for Endeavor on whatever they switch in. Then I can follow up with a Quick Attack to get that final KO on whatever they choose to switch in. So I think it's really nice, if I do say so myself. So Archeops still has a lot of value. It's something that can threaten flying types a little bit. Like right now I'm a little bit weak versus flying types, I would say. And it gives me another ground immunity. So right now I have 2 ground immunities, being Xatu and Archeops. Not that either of them are really good ground resists, but I digress. So yeah, that's the team up to this point. Let's go ahead and talk about these last 2 Pokemon and wrap up this video, which is already getting a little bit on the long side. So in terms of grass types, I really liked Trevenant, which I'm naming Treebeard after the Ent from Lord of the Rings. Trevenant, I think, is a really sneaky Pokemon. Like, it's actually really scary offensively, and a lot of people sleep on it. So, like, it has some options for offense, like Trick Room, which I really like. And then other things you can do, I have on here the Assault Vest item. I think Assault Vest with a Power-Up Punch is really nice, because you can then use Horn Leech as a recovery move. So Assault Vest works really well on Pokemon that have good recovery moves or recovery abilities, which is why you often see it on Tangrowth, Conkeldurr, things like that. Pokemon that have ways to gain HP, since they can no longer run leftovers. And so Trevenant sort of fits into that category as well. It also has some cheeky options like Leech Seed. You can abuse Harvest a little bit with items like Citrus Berry or a Guava Berry or things like that, which is really cheeky. So yeah, I really like Trevenant. It's a not bad way to threaten water types. It's not the best way, but it's not half bad if you ask me. And then second, I do have my Boltzmann, my Ampharos, which is not the Pokemon that I wanted in this slot. What I really wanted was Luxray, because Luxray can actually switch in on Scald. Not so much from like a bulk standpoint, but because it doesn't really suffer from the burn effect of Scald, because I do have Guts as a potential ability. And then Luxray as well would have given me a dual Intimidate core with Quillfish. Obviously it would be a budget core, but it still would have been really nice. But it wasn't meant to be. Aaron sniped me of Luxray, so instead we have Ampharos, which does have slightly better overall bulk than Luxray, which is quite nice. So Ampharos I can actually use defensively to like switch in on flying types if I need. And it has enough special attack to threaten water types if I need. Like base 115 is not bad at all. And then it has sort of the standard like agility, 3 attacks options. I do think it gets like Heal Bell as a cleric, so if for some reason I need to run Ampharos as a cleric, I can. So yeah, overall not too upset with the option of Ampharos. But I will say this to any coaches who are watching: if you want to make a trade, like there's a few Pokemon on my team that I would be willing to trade for a better grass or electric type. So hit me up, we could try and make that work. But with that said, I think overall the team's actually really solid. We've got every typing except for normal. We have some redundant typings, which I really like on water, steel, ground, and flying. I think those are like the most important typings to have redundancy on. Especially for Pokemon like Heatran, which like I said is often very pressured defensively, but hopefully this time around I can make really good use of it offensively. I've got really fantastic speed tiers. Like I don't have any gaps in the team. I wish I had slightly more speed. Like 120 at Arceus is not the greatest max speed to have, but I can live with it. I've got great priority options on Arceus, Medicham, Piloswine, Scizor, and even to a lesser extent like Quillfish, which has Aqua Jet, which is really nice. 5 Rock Setters. I have Spikes and Toxic Spikes. I have lots of mons with momentum, whether it's U-turn or Baton Pass or Volt Switch. I've got Switch and Trickaroo on 2 mons, or Trick and Switcheroo on 2 mons. yeah, so overall, I'm really happy with the squad, and I hope you guys like the team, and I hope that you are looking forward to this BBL season. If you guys are, do me a favor and drop a like on the video, and make sure you leave a sub, so that way you can stay up to date on all of the latest and greatest Pokemon content. As of now, I think we're sitting at like 294 subscribers. We were really close to 300 at the end of December. We had like 298, but I haven't uploaded anything in a little while, so the inactivity has hurt my sub numbers a little bit. But hopefully, in the next couple of weeks, we can get to 300 and hit that milestone. So really appreciate it if you guys help me out with that. And I promise you won't regret it. We have a lot of great action coming your way, like I said, with BBL this season. We do have our Week 1 game going up next week. It's going up against JB Westside and his Arkansas Razor Winds. So he has a nice team, and we'll definitely be breaking it down in next week's Team Builder. So make sure you check that out. Once again, thank you guys for watching. Until the next time, I'll see you guys later.